Welcome back to the Meaningful Success Podcast. I am Siah, and this is my big daddy,
Wade.
Wade.
People on the radio don't know what we're doing. We're waving to the screen. Anyway.
Welcome back. It's been a few weeks. We'll get into why that was. We keep having these consistency things come up that are just out of our control, honestly, but we're going to get that sorted hopefully soon. But for the moment, Father, what is your win for this week?
Well, my win for this week is really kind of two things kind of combined, but they're related. I mentioned on a previous episode that particularly the last quarter of the year always has a big pull on my time. There's some projects that I have that are just take a lot of my time and energies, and we advance those. And I'm actually in the moving towards the coasting part of that. When I say coasting, there's still things to do, but it's the heavy lift is just about completed. A couple big things in the next couple of weeks, and then it'll be kind of more in coast mode, which is really nice. But the other thing that actually ties to that, which is really the bigger win, is one of the things that I regularly look at in my work and the things that I'm doing are, what are those things that I'm doing? Am I still the person who needs to be doing these going forward? Mm-hmm. And some of those things are, I did need to be doing certain things to a certain point, but at a certain point in time, it just becomes more mechanical and not strategic. And this one is getting more into that realm. And so we are talking about transferring that over to some other folks in the company, so that my time is freed up for some other more strategic aspects. So that's my win, is that it'll be another year of working with it, but it'll be more on the transitional stage, which is cool.
That's great. So, and it sounds like you're getting a little bit of that burden off of you for sure.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
And it's really also good from a few vantage points. One, yes, it is that relief, but there's always new energies that come in. There was another couple things that I recently transferred to another individual in my company. They've got new energies, they got new insights, they got new ideas and creativity that are applied to it. And there's always enhancements that happen from that. So, it's not just that it's off my plate and on somebody else's plate. It's in those situations, it improves as well, because everybody has their unique talents that they can bring to the equation. So what about you? I mean, when you look at this past week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because it's been about 3 weeks since we've been doing this, what would you say was your biggest win?
My biggest win actually started today, which is that I'm participating in NaNoWriMo this year. For those who don't know what that is, it's National Novel Writing Month, and it's basically you set a goal of like 50,000 words over the course of November in your novel. And so I am doing it this year. I'm not 100% if it's going to be actually shooting for full 50,000. I might go for 40,000. I'm still kind of going back and forth on that. But it's been really good so far. I mean, I'm only one day in, but I've been planning for it for a little bit now and working toward it for a little bit now. So I feel kind of equipped to work on it. And I think it's going to really help me kind of get out of a slump that I've been in with my writing for a while now. Just make a lot of progress. I did like 1,300 words today, something like that. And that was actually a little below pace for the goals that I would need to be closer to like 2K for today, just kind of blocking out things like Thanksgiving and stuff like that ahead of time and knowing, when there's going to be time. But anyway, it feels like a big win just to be doing it and committed and jumping into it. It's been really good in the lead up to, like, not just today, but just having that to look forward to and to plan for and work toward having the follow through on it.
So are you using this as an advantage to work on the book that you had that you'd already started, or are you using this as kind of another creation that you're working on?
Yeah, this is working on the same book, the one that I had to kind of restart. That actually ties into the topic for today, that restarting, which I'll get into it in just a second. But yeah, it's the same book.
Okay.
So
that's good.
It'll end up being a higher word count than whatever the goal is, because some of it's already been done. But this is just about doing a certain number of words toward it in the month, more than hitting a certain total. So
Gotcha. Oh, that's great. So you kind of teased us with a little bit of a topic. So why don't you introduce that for everybody?
This kind of came from conversations I was having with one of my writing coaches who does critiques. Her name is Lauren. When I restarted the book, because I just ran into some issues, I was realizing there were problems with the story that I couldn't reconcile. I had to make some big changes. So when I shared with her for critique the part that I had sort of started over and written some new material, she said something to me in the midst of her critique that really stood out to me, which was that she was like, I know you thought that you had to restart the book entirely from zero, but I don't actually know that you have to do that. She said, you, with this new material you've added and with what I've read before, I actually think that some of the problems that you have been having not are entirely resolved, but they're improved for sure by the new material you're doing. She encouraged me that when I'm looking at restarting the book, I had been thinking of that as starting from zero, basically, and it felt like starting from zero. But because of the new material I was doing, it was actually more like, hey, there's a lot more of the work I did earlier this year that I can reuse and I can pull from than I originally thought. I'm not losing nearly as much progress as I thought I was. And the phrase she specifically used was, focus on what you have now, not on what you had before. And when I was focused on what I had before, it was focused on, all right, I'm going to have to do all this over again and whatever. But what I have now with these new passages I was writing, it changes the dynamic. It changes the dynamic of what I had in such a way that it actually improves things across the board. And of course, I'm going to have to redo a whole lot of stuff. There's a whole lot I wrote that I won't be able to reuse. But it's nowhere near as kind of an intense process as I originally thought it was going to be because of these new efforts. So just that idea really stuck out to me as something worth talking about. Just this idea of, I think sometimes especially when it comes to looking at our progress in life, or especially when we feel like we've failed. We feel like we've failed, or we feel like we've lost progress, or we're having to restart, or kind of retread the same ground. It's the same sort of idea as, like, people talk about this with fitness. Like, you work out for a year and then you fall off and you don't do anything and you gain a bunch of weight back and whatever, right? Which is a situation very relatable to me because that's where I've been for a while. And the reality is, like, if I start on a fitness journey where I am now, I actually am much better equipped for that fitness journey than I was the first time I did it.
Correct.
Because I have more now, in the sense that I have knowledge, I have some muscle memory, I have experience, I have whatever from, previous fitness journey or journeys that improves my success and speeds things up and helps me on my current journey. So this is something that applies in a lot of areas of life, and in kind of your success journey. Just this idea that what you have now, you probably have more now in various ways than you did the first time you tried something. Or maybe you never tried at all, but you gained more experience, more ideas, more connections, whatever. And maybe now is a better time for you to try something than it would have been a few years ago, right? So that's kind of the core idea.
This really reaches into so many different aspects. Sometimes we look back with nostalgia or rose-colored glasses, or without really necessarily a sense of perspective. It's almost a romanticizing of a previous time period or previous situation. I'll give you an example. Over my career, I've worked with a lot of companies that I've had have merged in other companies into them. When a company comes in and they're merged into a company, kind of establishing themselves under their new brand and all those kind of things tends to be a struggle for a lot of people. There's a consistent theme I've heard many, many, many times from some organizations once they've merged into a company that I've been with, and that is that no one knows who we are anymore. So the struggle is where I am now. no one knows where we are. People don't know our name as well, or we're not as well branded. And it's really interesting because coupled with that is always, well, everybody knew who we were before. But I don't know that that's actually the case in all reality. I mean, I think that there's reasons why sometimes these mergers take place. There's reasons why things are there, and I would imagine if you went back in time and sat down with those individuals before even that merger was even a consideration, you said, "How well are you known? How well is your brand?" I imagine they would have probably said, "Well, we're struggling with that. That's something that
Yeah.
we're trying to get better at." But when you go back and you look with hindsight, you start romanticizing the past as if you're so much further along than you may have actually been. And
Mm,
so I think one thing that we do is we kind of rose colored glasses things. And we do that in so many ways. We do that financially, we do that with projects, we do that with our fitness, we do that with so many things. So I think one of the aspects of that advice that she says, focus on what you have, not what you had. I think
yeah.
one aspect of it that we need to consider is, or I guess guard against, is distorted romanticizing of the past. It doesn't mean we can't learn from our history and that kind of stuff, but we can sometimes fool ourselves at the same time.
Yeah, and I think we can also do the same thing kind of in the inverse too, where
Mhm.
because this can be like a purely, I've gained a lot thing, or it can also be, hey, my position has changed and I need to be realistic, right?
Mhm.
If you just using the fitness thing as an example, because I've got it on the brain, like if you have an injury, right?
Mhm.
And you go into uh, you're recovering from that injury and you go into your fitness journey again after recovering, and there is a reality that there is a little bit of a slower progress. You have to accommodate for the injury. You have to make sure that maybe you're doing even completely different kind of exercise in order to strengthen that area, like if you have a
Mhm.
back injury or something like that, right? And so you have to be wise about too, like, just because you used to be somewhere doesn't necessarily mean you still are. And you could actually
Mhm.
re injure yourself if try and jump into
True.
something you're not prepared for. And that might sound like a little bit of a pessimistic approach to it, but it's more about just appreciating the truth of a situation. And
Yes.
that applies in both directions, right? Like, it's easy to have an inaccurate view of your current situation if you're romanticizing the past, right?
Right.
Or in my situation with my book, like, it's easy to feel discouraged because I feel like I've got a mountain to climb that I've already climbed once, right?
Yes.
uh, and I'm processing now that that's not true. But that's just it. It's not true. It's more about getting connected with the truth of a situation, and the truth aligning your perspective with what reality actually is, rather than either being discouraged or overcommitting to something you're not ready for, or whatever it may be. Um,
I think that's a
it's
really
not
good point.
really, yeah, it's not so much about optimism, pessimism, positive, negative. It's not really about that. It's more about getting outside of yourself and understanding a more accurate perspective.
Yeah, the perspective is the key because if you've got your eyes set on the past, then you oftentimes overlook all the advantages that you have currently. So yes, you are reworking this book, for example, but you're at a totally different place than you were before. You've got an understanding of your storyline more than you did before. You have an understanding of your characters more than you did before. You have an understanding of your work process more than you did before. You're in a new place with new friends, new inspiration, which are always going to bring about new creativity. That's a different thing. It's much like when you are maybe in a new job or something of that nature. Sometimes it's a matter of really looking and saying, "Wow." And taking stock of all the benefits that are around you, even when it feels like you've taken a step back. I have found that there's normally purpose in it, and there's usually a lot of good fruit that can come from that. There's been times in my career where I took a step backwards. There's been times that I took a different level position that was lower than I had experienced, and some cases lower compensation, or in some cases even substantially lower compensation. But where I was in my life and with the things that I was dealing with and the things that I was looking at, I found that in some cases I actually appreciated the different circumstance better than it was when it was in a previous state. For example, there's been times in my career, I had my own business for a while. I enjoyed that and I had some good success there. But there was a point in time where I had to, and I think I've shared this in my book or one of my books, that, determined to close that business. If you're looking at where you are now versus there's freedom, there's independence, there's a lot of benefits of being your own business owner. There's also a lot of pressure. There's also a lot of stress. There's also a lot of time. I mean, I was oftentimes working 7 days a week to keep up with all the things that I needed to do. So every circumstance has its benefits. And so I'm not talking about purely optimism versus pessimism, like you said earlier, but I think perspective is probably the right word. So, I mean, when you think about this topic, right now, where you're living and breathing this is with respect to the book. When you got that advice, is there one thing about that you really is really keeping you motivated from that perspective?
I think it has helped to reduce the amount of the feeling of futility that can come sometimes when
Mm,
you feel like you have to redo a bunch of work or whatever. It can start to feel like your efforts are futile because it's like, well, I put in so much work and now before this conversation that I'm talking about, I was like, well, do I have to throw it all away? And that
mm,
was, a whole lot of work. And so just having that perspective, that more accurate perspective of, you know, I don't have to throw it all away. There's a lot I do, but there's a lot I can salvage. And there's a lot of, you know, like you said, like you have way more knowledge and way more understanding of the things you're trying to do.
mhm.
When you're returning to it. I think that's the biggest thing is it has helped to reduce that sort of
Feeling of futility.
exhaustion, that sort of feeling of futility and exhaustion. And
Mhm.
give me a little more encouragement of, okay, like I can do this. I can, get back into it and make progress again and all that. So
We talk about this a lot. Your journey to success is not a linear path, and it really is about the journey. There are goals that you have, there are objectives you're going to want to reach and that you will reach. But once you reach it, you're going to set another goal. So when we really think about it, we live in that journey of moving things forward to what we're trying to achieve. If you're in one of those places right now where you feel like you've taken some step backs or two steps back, or you're climbing that same hill again, or for the third time or fourth time, look around you, I guess is what I would say, because there's probably a lot of wisdom that you've gained. There's probably a lot of blessings that you have around you that you haven't maybe have not thought about from that perspective. Just recognize it's just another step along the way. And so you're not going backwards. It's part of that journey. And I would just encourage you not to get discouraged from that standpoint because you do have a lot now.
well, Dad, I think that that's a good place for us to wrap it up for today. But before
Yeah.
we do, what
Yes.
is your weekly favorite?
Oh, it's the weekly favorite.
I had a kind of tough time narrowing down this week because, first of all, my wife was out of town for about a week, and she was able to come back, and so I was so excited to see her again. So that was a favorite part, getting to pick her up at the airport. And even extra special was that your sister actually has moved back with us for a period of time, and so getting to see her, which haven't gotten to see her for a while. So that's been a weekly favorite. And yesterday, at least yesterday from the time that we filmed and recorded this, it was Halloween. And so I enjoyed kind of handing out candy and watching the trick or treaters as they came by the door and watching the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown on TV and that kind of stuff. So I think I said in one of the previous episodes, I want to enjoy the holidays. And so I'm starting
Yeah,
to,
so
I'm
you're
doing
doing
that.
that. Yeah.
I'm doing that.
Yeah.
How about you?
So this is kind of tied in with I said earlier that we were going to explain why there's been an absence, and this is it. So this is not my favorite, but but Audrey and I got COVID, and we were
Hmm.
really sick for uh, like 2 weeks. And Emma, our dog, really early into that, also got sick, and we actually had to take her to the emergency animal hospital over it.
Hmm.
So it was just a really awful time. But one thing that was, and so we obviously couldn't record. That's why
Right.
there haven't been episodes. Anyway, so one thing that was really cool about it, though, was because we're both sick, we're just dead. We didn't really have energy to do anything except for just kind of hang out. And so we just cuddled on the couch watching movies a lot for like a week. That was what our nights were. We're just watching movies together. And that was really nice. I mean, it's not like we never do that or something, but just having that extra time that felt really special. And it was really nice to spend time with Audrey and Emma. Emma would, climb up between us usually. And, so the three of us are all sitting on the couch watching whatever movies. And so that was really fun.
And for reassurance, y'all are both feeling better and Emma's feeling better.
Yeah, no, Emma was better way before we were. She was better after a few days once we gave her the medicine the doctor gave us. It took us a while, and we're still kind of recovering a little bit. We still have some of the exhaustion and just, a little bit of stuff, but we don't have COVID anymore. Like, we're totally better in that regard. It's just recovering from having been really sick, and your body rebuilding energy and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, I'm glad you're better.
Yeah, me too. So,
well, folks, we appreciate you listening and joining us. So sorry for that delay of a few weeks, but I think you now know why that was. And, the reality is we're going to try to be consistent and drop some new podcast every week. But there are going to be times that there may be something that comes up that we'll miss. And in those cases, we'll explain kind of what's going on. But we do wish you the best, and I encourage you to reach out to us. If you have ideas for us, if you have comments for us, or you want to share some of your stories, go to speakpipe.com/MSP, and you can leave a voicemail with your comments, and we'd be eager to hear that. Any other thoughts you have, Siah?
I don't think so. Just thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds great. Bye-bye.
This violet sky.
The Meaningful Success Podcast is myself, Siah, and my father, Wade.
That's me.
That's him. Music is Brings Back the Feeling by Daniel Gunnarsson, licensed through Epidemic Sound. And if you want to check out more about our podcast, you can visit our website at meaningfulsuccesspodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.